Hollywood has come to be known as the pinnacle of the film industry. With its big budgets, big stars, and dedicated film crews, they create stunning films that millions of people watch. If you were anything like me growing up, Hollywood seemed to be this magical place somewhere in the neighborhoods of Los Angeles, filled with beautiful people who have fairy tale lives. Maybe you think of Hollywood Boulevard with Hollywood Walk of Fame and the Grauman's Chinese Theater. But what really is Hollywood? Where is it? Well, nowadays, Hollywood is less known as a neighborhood and more of a term which refers to all those big studios in the US. Specifically, the studios known as the Big Six, consisting of Universal Pictures, Paramount, Warner Bros., Walt Disney, Columbia, and 20th Century Fox. When you hear someone using Hollywood, they're most likely referring to any or all of those big studios. And for countless years, Hollywood has seemingly been on the up and up, even topping their highest grossing movie of all time in the box office not just 2 years ago. But there are major problems within the industry. They've had the spotlight on them for the past century, and it's time to finally end the obsession over Hollywood. To start, in 1975, Steven Spielberg would release the hit movie Jaws, a movie with a simple storyline and for the time stunning special effects. Jaws had taken the #1 spot for the highest grossing film of all time, and it was known as the first blockbuster. Blockbuster movies have been known as any film with a big budget, oftentimes big actors, and they make a lot of money in the box office. Not long after the release of Jaws, in 1977, George Lucas released Star Wars Episode IV, which would steal Jaws' #1 spot for the highest grossing movie. And following these two movies, it didn't take long for Hollywood to notice the success of the so-called blockbuster. To this day, Hollywood's primary focus is still on making blockbusters. Even all of the top 10 grossing films of all time are blockbusters. Looking at the biggest film of 2021, Fast and Furious 9, is the 9th film of a huge franchise. The budget of the movie was about $200 million, and in the US it netted $169 million. It would have lost money if it were just released in the US, but globally it made $700 million. To me, and I'm sure a lot of people, another Furious movie seemed like they were beating a dead horse, less of an important finale to the franchise, and more of a money grab. But the movie was a big success in foreign countries because they don't have major film studios that we have here in the US. So seeing a movie that had a big budget, big stars, and that was well produced was rare. With this system, Hollywood basically has a never-ending money machine as long as they're able to maintain the control of movie distribution overseas. But who cares if blockbusters are all they produce? Well, if that is all they produce, then that's what's marketed and that's what most people will go see in the theaters. Producers and investors put the most money into big budget movies so they can be as high quality as they could be. With them having so much invested in the film, they cannot let the movie flop. So they push the advertising like crazy, which is why you might have seen a lot of ads for movies like Free Guy or No Time to Die. With them pushing these big movies as much as they are, they leave the little guy behind. The little guy being small budget movies, movies that had real passion behind them, not just explosions and Vin Diesel. Especially with the pandemic, we're no longer able to easily find and go see small budget movies that might as well be just as good as the Avengers. We have to go out of our way to find and support small budget, thought-provoking films. While obsessed with making as much money as possible, Hollywood is looking past the poor working conditions that they force their workers to endure. On March 6, 1997, Brent Hirschman was killed in a car crash on his way home from work. He had fallen asleep at the wheel after completing a 19-hour work shift on the film set of Pleasantville. Haskell Wexler, a Hollywood veteran, has claimed that on average, film crews are working 16-plus hours in a shift. The conditions that Brent had faced during his time on the set of Pleasantville were not isolated to that set alone. These are widespread across the film industry. Riverdale star KJ Apa had gotten into a late-night car crash after a 16-hour workday on set. He claimed that there were no transports to and from the set, which led to a lot of the crew being forced to drive home in the early hours of the morning. These issues are a direct product of Hollywood elites having their eyes set on the money instead of their employees. And there have been movements and unions trying for better hours and limitations on those hours, but there has been no change. Wexler has said that, "I love to make films, but the health of my fellow film workers and citizens is more important than anything on the silver screen." Government regulators seem afraid to confront Hollywood, and they have fallen short on protecting workers' hours in our industry. Government regulators such as OSHA are tasked to monitor accidents in the workplace, but they refuse to look at accidents outside of the workplace, even in cases such as Brent's. According to Claudia Puig, a writer at the Los Angeles Times, the number of hours in a day have actually increased over the past couple of decades. As people go to see more films created by big companies, we're directly supporting the system that Hollywood has deemed the norm for movie sets. A common argument for why Hollywood deserves its infamy is that the big studios donate millions of dollars to charity every year. Universal Studios actually has a form that charitable organizations can fill out for Universal Orlando to donate to. Arguably the biggest of the studios, Walt Disney, has most recently donated $333 million in 2020. They have also helped 130,000 kids in the Make-A-Wish program in their 40 years of partnership. Universal has a resort located in Orlando, Florida. It seems that Universal Orlando is their primary location of operation for charitable action. On the website it says, since 1998, to quote, has awarded and pledged over $27 million to organizations and programs that take a proactive approach to community needs in the areas of education, children and families, and basic needs. Having a system in place specifically designed for charity is a great allocation of manpower and money, but looking at how much of these companies make in a year, this doesn't seem as selfless as it appears. Walt Disney made $65 billion in 2020 and donated only $333 million. That means they donated 0.005% of their yearly income. And Universal has apparently donated $27 million over the course of the past 23 years, and at least has made $3 billion from their theme parks alone this year. The average for charity given for American citizens is 1 to 3% of yearly income. Middle-class Americans give 600% more of their income than Walt Disney does. Sure, it's still charity, but is it enough to make up for the actions that are taken to make the money that they're giving away? Another argument in favor of Hollywood is simple. People enjoy the movies. A large number of people find their movies to be very entertaining. Big studios have a lot of money, and they're able to make great-looking movies with stars that people love. Their visuals exceed anything achievable by a small-budget movie. Big studios are able to create massive franchises with their massive budgets with cinematic universes like Marvel's 26-movie series that have made billions of dollars. Fans love it, and why shouldn't they? Hollywood has been glorified for as long as it's been around. With the impacts Hollywood has, it's time for people to move on and shut off the spotlight that we have placed on Hollywood. Overall, I encourage you to go find smaller studios. Look for lower budget movies that are in the genres that you like. Old habits die hard, so most likely you will go and see the next Marvel movie in theaters, or just watch it whenever it becomes available to stream. Just next time you go and see one of these films, think about what might have happened to create that film you're watching, and who is truly benefiting from the support you're giving them.